Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Just letting you know this session is recorded. We will make sure that everyone has a copy of the recording after the session. We're also obviously live and monitoring the Q&A. So, definitely feel free to surface up questions in real time, and we'll do our best to either get those during the session or after the session. We want this to be interactive. So first off, my name is Carson Hetty. I am the managing director for our enterprise nonprofit space for North America for Microsoft. And you are with us today for our session, GitHub 101 for Nonprofits, Build, Secure, and Collaborate with Impact. At Microsoft Elevate, which I'm a part of, we believe technology should be an accelerator for mission-driven work. And we've been working very closely with our GitHub for Nonprofit team, who I'm going to hand you over to Cynthia here momentarily. Today, nonprofits like yours are building the future with data, with innovation, and with collaboration. So today's session is really all about helping you unlock new ways to scale your impact through and with GitHub. Whether this is your very first introduction to GitHub, or if you're looking for ways to take your open source and collaboration efforts further, you're in the right spot. So you're going to hear how nonprofits are already using these tools to save time, protect their data, strengthen community-driven work, and you're also going to walk away with some practical skills that you can apply immediately. We're going to give some resources so you can have further dialogue. Glad to connect and engage one-to-one as a result of this session. So feel free to reach out to me and some of the others that you'll meet throughout the course of today's session if you want to continue the dialogue. We're also really excited to be joined by our valued partners at DataKind. Very grateful. They're going to be on today sharing their perspective on using GitHub to drive global social impact. And with that, let's dive in. It's my pleasure to hand things over to Cynthia, who's going to lead us into today's session. So Cynthia, take it away.
Thank you so much, Carson. All right, welcome everybody. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. Let me know in the chat if you have any issues with that, and the recording will be out afterwards as well. Oh, I see a hand. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. Great. To start, we're going to go over what is GitHub. If you haven't heard of GitHub, that's totally okay. We're going to talk a little bit about what it is. GitHub is an integrated single enterprise-ready platform for development, but not just for developers, also for designers, for researchers, for individuals working with the beneficiaries in your community, for social sector organizations, large international development organizations, and small grassroots nonprofits as well. It is an industry level of collaborative tools for developers to work together within your organization, as well as with a broader community of developers. In addition to that, there's also layers of security within GitHub on how you work. All your code, all their development tools will be able to have security with our free tools, as well as additional add-on tools. In addition to that, there's also GitHub Copilot. So if you've heard of Microsoft Copilot, GitHub Copilot is a tool for developers to help them code a little bit easier. So a little bit more about the developer platform that I had mentioned earlier. So GitHub has millions of developers on the platform, and they also contribute to lots of open source communities. So we have corporations on here, we have different open source projects. We also have leading social sector organizations. We have large UN agencies, as well as smaller volunteer-run. Volunteer. Oh, I think somebody want to go on mute to make sure that we can capture everything on there. And on here, with the larger community that I mentioned, you can leverage the developers from those communities, from those top open source projects, to contribute to your project. And a little more about the platform itself. So in terms of collaboration, we have pull requests. We're going to go a little bit more about what that means. We have inner sourcing for collaboration, different project tools where you can see your projects overall, all your development, and be able to share that publicly or keep it internal as well. Having discussion boards like forums to talk to your community, to talk to your developers, your volunteers, anybody who may come across your project and want to contribute. There's also, you can take a look at different productivity tools like GitHub Copilot that we talked about, having an automated Copilot developer to help highlight any errors that are occurring, provide recommendations on your code. CI/CD with GitHub Actions, having an automated workflow, which we'll talk more about, to help do some of the regular tasks, automate those tasks that are recurring, any testing that occurs, or small things, being able to add reminders to the work that you have. And code spaces, this one's my favorite. Code spaces allows developers to help jump in to your project without having to set up a local environment. They can spin up a code space, and it makes it really easy for developers to jump in without needing a long setup time. So they can help contribute right away. And then there's also security. So security with code scanning as well as secret scanning to make sure that the code that you have, any dependencies that you have, are reviewed automatically, and it'll let you know whenever there is an issue, and you can just go ahead and figure out where that the bug might be, or where there is a dependency that needs to be updated in a little bit easier way. There's also additional different tools in terms of security with your code, as well as with the users. Being able to manage the users with different access controls makes it a little bit easier whenever you have volunteers that want to join your project. And then with scale, having those volunteers coming from a wide range of experiences, different training, different skill sets that can then jump into your nonprofit project. So on here, I also want to highlight a little bit more on the collaboration part. So GitHub focuses on collaboration really at its core. There's sometimes inefficient collaboration really results in a lot of waste of time and resources, and it's very difficult to restart collaboration. So we have the GitHub flow that will go and show a little bit more of that branch-based workflow and what that means, so everybody can use it, not just developers as well. Having a way for project managers, operation leads, volunteers, community managers to work together in one place, so everything isn't so siloed. You can break down those silos through inner sourcing that we talked a little bit about. Open source, which we'll talk a little bit more in a bit, and David kind of also share about their open source projects. There's also inner source practices that you can incorporate across your teams that can share the knowledge and reuse code without having to recreate and have a long onboarding process. So on here with issues and projects are one way they can break down those tasks and really track the relationships between the issues that are occurring. For example, these are the tickets that you can add, and can have custom fields, different conversations, and different projects. Sorry. Excuse me. Projects which are similar to spreadsheets or different project boards, like the Kanban board, to track your project, right? In an easy way. Losing my voice already. In terms of productivity, so we want to be able to enable developers around the world to be as productive and be as creative as they can be. But we also want to make sure that there's a fast onboarding time so they can do that as quickly as possible. We found that GitHub has been able to reduce developer onboarding by about 80% with tools like Codespaces, and you can spin up an environment right away. We've done this with different workshops, working with students, for example, that want to contribute to a volunteering project. They, within a 2-3 hour period, they can get set up, find a project or an issue that they want to work with. They find a bug, then they can put in a fix right away within a workshop period. So it's a great way for events such as hackathons or Hacktoberfest coming up in October for individuals to get involved with nonprofits. Other ways to improve productivity has been under a code search. Being able to have a code view, being able to search what has been done before, and be able to navigate and understand the code for anybody who's just starting on. GitHub Actions. So GitHub Actions is an automated workflow. So you can find ways to easily set up regular tasks that you do day to day. So is that testing, routine administration, having notifications to let you know if you need to take a look at an issue. For example, if a volunteer had said, hey, there's something wrong or there's a bug right here, you can have a workflow set up to review that or to remind your community managers to take a look at those issues. And this way, it really gives a lot of time away from all the administrative work and allow your developers and volunteers to work on more creative solutions for your beneficiaries. So I'm going to take a step back and talk a little bit about Git overall on Git branching and what that means. Definitely feel free to put your questions in the chat as well, and I'll take a look at that. So Git takes a trunk-based development. You have a main project or a main trunk where you have all your code, and then people can then use PR or pull requests or merging flow to be able to take one chunk of work and say, I want to edit this piece using a branch, and then they edit that, and then they push it back into your main set of work. So those branches they will have a copy of all the work that's been done, and you can take a look at each version. So how that works, we have here a main branch. So this is all your code, the tool that you have, the nonprofits, all your work, any trainings. Let's say there is a training document you want to edit. So someone will then say, I'm going to create a copy, create a branch, and edit one file. So they then create an edit on that branch, make all those edits, and then they say, okay, I'm ready to integrate those edits back into the main file. They merge with that pull request, and you have that updated file. So it could be code, it could be documentation, it could be different models that you may be building for your tool. And this way you have a copy of all the versions that are created. And you can also revert back if there's something that you want to change. GitHub issues, to dive a little bit deeper. So GitHub issues are like tickets. They're a way for the community or your volunteers to say, this is an issue that I found, or you can highlight, say, here are some issues that we want volunteers to work on, and volunteers can then find these issues and pick it up and work on them. And they can be labeled in different way with documentation or good first issue, which is a common label for anybody who's starting to work within GitHub or starting in their career. So issues are completely integrated within GitHub. They can be linked to different commits, pull requests. Each repository will have an issues tracker. You can track them in many different ways as well, and also track them within your project board, which we'll discuss in the next slide. And then when you close an issue, it'll also be can be automatically closed when you have that pull request to say that this task is now done, and check. No need to worry about it anymore. And there's also a copy of that in your closed issues, so you can take a look at what's been done previously. So under projects, so this is a list of all the issues and all the pull requests that have been done, and you can have a holistic view of all your work. And it's built as an adaptable, almost like a spreadsheet task board or a roadmap, and that you can share publicly as well, not just as well as internally. You can have multiple different views, something for each of your teams to work on. So what does all that mean for nonprofits? So nonprofits, we realize that a lot of social sector organizations as well as nonprofits use GitHub to build their community, to build their tool and share it out with their constituents. So GitHub has launched a free GitHub Teams plan specifically for nonprofits. I'll put in the chat there how you can access the free Teams plan, and also 25% off GitHub Enterprise. All you need to do is submit your nonprofit's application information, and then we can get you started and set you up with GitHub. If you're already on GitHub, you can also access this. It's available globally, and feel free to ask any questions as well. I'll also have a QR code at the end. So we talked a lot about community. I want to highlight a little bit more about community and how volunteer developers can help contribute. on how you can also tap into the cohort of developers that are already on GitHub. So volunteers can then take a look at your code, contribute to it, report on any bugs, help improve your projects at scale and globally. So you can do so a little bit easier, asynchronously, and you can also make sure that someone is always looking at your code and it's not stale. You can also share resources within the social sector where other nonprofits can share your code, their code with you, and you can share it with them. So in other words, we can build and have tools that aren't duplicated in different ways, and we can have one tool that can be improved upon for different sectors and different problem areas. Having a nonprofit develop for a focus tool, this also allows us to have standardized environments across the organization for all your developers. You can have different ways to view your security and making sure everybody sees this is how it's set up. And you can also hopefully be able to answer some challenges within accessibility, which we'll talk about as well within the challenges of working in open source for the social sector. Some challenges that we're hoping to really answer are around governance, being able to have a better way to have a community governance on challenges, reduce some dependency managers risk through GitHub, but also this is not just GitHub, this is also within the social sector in open source. There's some challenges, of course, with connectivity that we want to help tackle, talking about bandwidth limitations, building tools for the social sector. Within the social sector, there's often challenges with high cost of infrastructure hosting, high data costs, where in regions where internet access availability is limited, that can sometimes be a challenge. So in terms of accessibility, there's also documentation and tutorials that sometimes are primarily available in one language. We want to be able to encourage breaking barriers for non-English speakers or developers, being able to encourage having READMEs or documentation in multiple languages to really reduce the challenges of burnout, funding restraints, and resources with open source tools. So on open source, has anybody heard about digital public goods? I can't see the chat right now, but I'm hoping there's some comments in there. Digital public goods, so this is one of the ways to tackle all those challenges that we had just talked about, is through the Digital Public Goods Alliance. In 2019, the governments of Norway, Sierra Leone, UNICEF, iSpirit initiated the Digital Public Goods Alliance, which is aimed to share open source goods to engage communities, pull data sets, and really highlight that here's a registry of projects that you can contribute to, and please add your projects on there if you believe your project qualifies as a public good. They're managed by the multi-stakeholder UN-endorsed initiative that facilitates all of this, and they also manage that registry. So digital public goods can be open source software, open data, open models, open standards, and open content as well, so not just code. And they adhere to digital public good standard, which is the standard here highlights what qualifies as a digital public good. So if your project has a relevance to the Sustainable Development Goals, they use an approved open license, has clear ownership, platform independence, great documentation. We talked about the challenges of documentation earlier, adherence to privacy and applicable laws, as well as standards and best practices, and ultimately do no harm by design. If your project adheres to all of those standard requirements, you can submit your project to the registry, or you can nominate a project that you know of to be added to the registry for the Digital Public Goods Alliance, and makes it a little bit easier for volunteers to find your project and contribute to it. And we're very lucky today we have DataKind, who has a digital public good, a DPG project on the registry, and they're here to talk a little bit more about the organization and the projects that they have that you can get involved with today as well. So I'm going to hand it over to our lovely DataKind partners. I'm going to stop sharing and check our chat.
Excellent. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. I think there's 73 of us live, which is pretty amazing for the afternoon before a long weekend, at least here in the United States. So I'm thrilled to be talking to you today. I'm Caitlin Augustine. I'm the Vice President of Product and Programs for DataKind, and I'm joined by my colleague, Mitali Iyengar, who is our Director of Programs for US communities, or excuse me, for our global communities, one of our three portfolios alongside US communities and US education. Now, I'm going to run through here update on just where DataKind is in the world. Some of you might have heard of us. We're about 15 years old. Talk a little bit about what it means to build data-driven projects and how you can get engaged with DataKind. And then I'm going to hand it over to Tali to talk about one of our global communities projects that we have done in partnership with GitHub and with Microsoft. So with that, DataKind, our mission is to use data science and AI in the service of humanity. And like I said, we're nearly 15 years old, and we were really founded based on this idea that social impact organizations want to use digital technology, but they face challenges in accessing and implementing it. I am a volunteer with many organizations. I know this to be true. I know we have a lot of social impact organizations on the line. This is a pain point. It's not a lack of desire. It's not a lack of interest. It's not even a lack of skill, but it's a barrier to access, either a price point access, a resources within the team access, and DataKind aims to close that gap. So as an organization, we are focused on closing that digital technology gap for social impact organizations. And for us, success is when DataKind and our partners have created data-driven solutions that are adopted widely and contribute positively to sector level solutions. So we are helping solve these problems at a sector level with meaningful, widely distributed, sustainable, and context appropriate solutions. Now, DataKind, we have projects all over the world. We've done over 450 projects in the past 13 years. We recently shipped some benefits access software that had 130 partners who contributed to those solutions and to the idea of what that could be. Some of the impact that we look at are, yes, research citations, but also the impact of using our tools. So looking at how does the economic opportunity of an area grow, looking at the millions of dollars that get redeployed back into communities because of using technology. And looking at kind of our information around the world, we try to learn out loud. So we're a nonprofit. A big part of our work in this open source, open access community is to share not only our successes, but our failures. So you can find a lot of our publications on our blog, but also in journals and magazines sort of around the globe, aiming to share what it means to try to use data and technology for impact. So we do this with four main goals in mind. So the work that we do is human-centered, which means that we take a human first and ethics and equity lens from the beginning. We aim to build actionable solutions. So the insights that we are putting forth in our technology must be meaningful to the end users. We build for cost efficiency. So with that idea, not just of sustainability in the operating costs, but also in the environmental costs. And that means using the technology that is appropriate for the problem at hand. And finally, we aim for trustworthiness, human in the loop design principles, and using secure by design security practices. And we're talking about GitHub. So just to say, a lot of our work is powered by GitHub. DataKind, I just took a quick screenshot of our public view. We have 145 public repos here where we're doing a lot of collaboration with communities around the world to sustain and grow solutions. So when I talk about social impact solutions, when you as technologists and social impact actors, or individuals who are curious about how you can give back to your communities through these social impact opportunities like the ones that GitHub runs, when DataKind thinks about these components of a solution, we think about 6 main components. And yes, the technology is a part of it. Yes, technologists and data scientists are a part of it, but also it is so key to have a strong problem statement. We need to understand the problem that we are solving. And we need to understand why that problem matters in context. And that problem is not developed by us technologists sitting in a Teams meeting. That's developed with deep collaboration with subject matter expertise who understand the problem space, but also social actors, those individuals who are the end impacted by the use of our technology solutions. So understanding who is it that will feel the impacts, both positive and negative, by our introduction of a new software. And finally, we do need great data sets, and we do need innovative funding and resourcing partners like GitHub, like Microsoft, who are willing to invest in and grow these technology for impact solutions. Now, when we go a little bit deeper into those components, we start from this point of view that ethics, privacy, and risk management are prioritized from the start. At DataKind, and I would encourage you, wherever you are in your data for good and your open source journey, is to think of not only what could go right when you're building out your solutions, but also what could go wrong, right? It is, and what could go wrong even if your solution is built to the most technical correctness and capability. We think about this a lot in the social impact space. We are building tools that often are used to support individuals at a time of life when they are the most vulnerable. So we might be thinking in a positive way about building a tool that can identify communities disconnected from, say, healthcare systems, right? Building a piece of software where you can identify cold spots. And that has a very positive altruistic purpose, right? We want to identify communities so that we can bring community health workers and community health services to them. Well, what happens if those communities are identified? Are they vulnerable populations to economic issues? Are they vulnerable because of their a cultural community that they are part of? So understanding what we are doing and why we are doing it, and prioritizing a clear risk assessment, and understanding that the end impacted by the tools are people who are far beyond our repos. To do that, we often, we take this approach of learning from experts and listening to all voices. It is incredibly important to have a technologist expert point of view. It is equally important to have a social impact point of view, but it is most important to have an understanding of the community and the cultural context that your solutions are going to be deployed within. We must understand what it means when we put a software solution out into the world, and we have to ensure that the solution meets those demands. And as a technologist, I'm an optimist here. I'm a techno-optimist that technology has a real piece of solving some of these wicked problems in the world. And we really say we need to focus on the leverage points for systems change. Not every solution can be fixed with technology, with software, or even with open source, right? I think in our community, we often say, these solutions are free, therefore it solves the problem. But understanding a free software cannot be utilized by a team who has no capability to access the internet, or a mobile app can't be used if you don't have smartphones. So understanding where we are building that software and building out those particular solutions in a way that can be change making within a particular sector and system. Okay, I've given you a little bit of a lecture of who DataKind is, what some of the impact we've had in the world, and what are the sort of building blocks for the solutions we make. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of those examples, some of those solutions that do serve the good of many, and how you could connect with them. So what DataKind does when we are building out solutions is we start with that problem discovery and we co-design a solution vision with those social actors and the subject matter experts. And then in a volunteer community-driven way, we do a lot of research, rapid prototyping, exploratory analysis, and feature design with volunteers. And this is through events and projects. So if you get our newsletter, you often see a call to action of raise your hand, we need some help here. Um, we then engage in a deeper product development cycle in close collaboration with those user groups, and we release those products out in free and open ways with a goal of meeting digital public good standards. So we release products into the world with the intent of making them free and accessible to end users. And what that looks like, I'm going to just give you 3 quick examples here. It's tools like our tool now that is called the Container-Based Action Routing Tool, or CART. CART started from a community problem in container-based sanitation. A partner of ours, Soil Haiti, came to us and said, we have this problem where we are delivering container-based toilets, which are 5-gallon, those big buckets. They're delivering them to homes on a certain time interval. Those are used as the primary sanitation tool in those homes. And then they're collecting them after a certain time period and delivering a fresh bucket. This is a huge boon to these communities that do not have connected sanitation systems. And Soil said, we have this fleet of vehicles. We have cars, we have trucks, we have trolleys, we have wheelbarrows. How do we make it efficient to deliver our containers to these homes on a given time scale every day? And what can we do to make this easier? They were spending hours a day trying to figure out these routes, trying to figure out the plans. And we built a tool at that point for this one partner in a volunteer collaboration way that was able to save them 10% of their travel time for these drives. And what that did was it sparked the idea for the Container-Based Sanitation Alliance, saying, you know what, this is a solution we need too. So we ended up working with a large stakeholder community with, again, a mix of social actors, of subject matter experts, and volunteers to build out now what is a open source project, CART. You can access it. You can please contribute to it. That's on its path to being a digital public good. In another project, this is actually one of our digital public goods, it's the Data Observation Toolkit. Now, anyone who's spent time collecting data either internally or externally, you know that human collected information is often prone to errors. And we ended up working with a healthcare partner. Initially, it was the organization Medic, who has teams of community health workers working around the globe. And this data that they were collecting was not being actioned against. And it was because the data was not trusted by the wider health community. And if you don't trust the data, you're not going to use the data. So we built a tool called the Data Observation Toolkit that identifies inconsistent or problematic data on top of any data set for immediate remediation, so that a human reviewer of data coming into a system, say from community health workers, could see where there are problems in that data and make a decision for how to fix it to improve the trust in the data, the validity of that data, and thus improve the data use cycles. This has been an amazing project that's gone on now for many years. It is a digital public good. And part of that work was able to do things like identifying when healthcare devices like thermometers were miscalibrated. So flagging data that looked consistently wrong, but it followed a pattern you'd expect, just off a couple of degrees. So you could identify where did you need to change out equipment versus say, where do you need to do retraining of your health team? And because this tool has been around for over 5 years, we actually have had a really robust community engaged around it. And most recently, we had a big open source sprint with a number of our community members. And one of our community members, and I put a screenshot of her blog post up, which is actually published on GitHub, she helped rewrite a number of our docs and improve the setup process to make it even easier for those end users to deploy this system. Now, finally, another example here in the US, we started about 2 years ago a project with a food bank in Florida who wanted to know, could they identify communities that they should take their food distribution services into that were not currently being served. And we started this as a hackathon. So again, open source, high engagement, short term, hosted in GitHub with, I think, one of our records of over 300 commits in a weekend. From a volunteer team. And they said, yes, they actually were able to solve that. The data was sufficient to be able to solve that problem. But rather than do it as point in time reporting, over the next 2 years, this actually evolved into an open access product solution, a website called ladderhub.org that now any food bank across the United States can use to draw insights and information about the community they're serving. So this is an example of, again, a community-driven tool created and built to be made in a very accessible way. So those are 3 of the 450 plus projects we have. My colleague Tali is going to jump in a second to give you a deeper dive into a specific partnership that we have with GitHub and Microsoft. But before we jump over to that, I do just want to mention there are many ways to get engaged with us as technologists or non-technologists. You can use all of our products. You can engage with us to get support for using them. You can sign up as a volunteer. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can contribute through the For Good First issue. And also, you can definitely email us. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Mitali, and who is our Director of Global Communities, and she's going to give you this deep dive into the Humanitarian Data Insights Project.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Caitlin, and hello, everyone. I'm really excited to share a little bit about our project, which was an awesome collaboration. This was led by DataKind and Save the Children and supported by both Microsoft and GitHub for social impact. So to give you a little bit of a backdrop for this collaboration, this is rooted really in the reality of the humanitarian situation around the world. And Caitlin, if we go to the next slide, there are some facts out there that you can see, you're probably seeing in the news every day. The demand for humanitarian aid has really reached a critical point due to escalating global crises combined with massive global funding shortfalls. And in this dire situation, it has forced everyone to explore innovation in all sorts of ways, including in partnerships when it comes to supporting humanitarians direct the delivery of essential humanitarian assistance more effectively. And that's needed more than ever before. So given the nature of the humanitarian work, it really boils down to timely and decisive action. So if we move to the next slide, the challenge around that, though, is the critical need for planning, for preparedness, and for response was really the issue with combining data and combining meaningful data meaningfully. So it was really one of the most widely experienced challenges across the sector. And the fragmented nature of those crucial data sets, which tends to be scattered across various sources and platforms, really hindered organizations from being able to use that information, that data, and use it with agility. So while streamlining access to that data is imperative, and unsurprisingly, there's been a ton of excitement that emerging technologies can offer sort of transformative opportunities to address these, really persistent, intractable pain points, wicked problems, as Caitlin called them. But for many organizations, this is true not only in the humanitarian sector, but across the nonprofit space. For many organizations, there are considerable barriers to accessing that technology, maybe testing it or trying it out, trusting that technology, and then eventually going on to actually implementing them and understanding what is the return on that investment of going for that technological approach. And so what we did at DataKine, on the next slide, please, is we, in partnership with Save the Children and with generous support from Microsoft and GitHub, we dove in to figure out if we can do more with humanitarian data given new technologies. This was an incredible opportunity to develop useful and usable AI-powered tooling that would demonstrate to not only within the humanitarian sector, like I said, but across the social sector, how AI can help overcome some of those data challenges, boost programmatic efficiencies, and do more with limited resources, so that those organizations can really focus on amplifying their impact. To unlock that part, though, we needed to look at what was actually useful and usable, and we committed a significant portion of our project to listening and learning from the community, and really interrogating where AI could genuinely play a transformative role. We spent a few months asking people from within the community about their data pain points, particularly those that impacted response and coordination. And there was a lot of variety, but thematically, what emerged was data discovery, so being able to actually make sense of large flows of data in an event, interoperability, being able to combine data in different formats and different sources, and then also having the ability to know how to use that data effectively, so the data literacy. These emerged as top priority challenges that need to be addressed. And the question opened up, can we use generative AI to address this? So that was great, but we also wanted to consider the fact that there's a spectrum of risk when it comes to the use of emerging technologies. At that time when we started this generative AI, and really applications vary in the risk that they present due to things like hallucination and bias, omission, and other factors around safety. So again, leaning in on the community, we really checked in to understand where is the sector's appetite for that risk, and we understood that we need to actually target safer applications that are supported with a solid framework for safety, prompt engineering, grounding, evaluation, really taking into our solution design, I think, as Caitlin showed, within that, within all of the different components of how we work, really leaning in on community voices to help give us the guidance that we needed into how we design our solutions. So as a result, we learned, unsurprisingly maybe, that not all of the pain points that were shared could, as far as we could tell, be meaningfully solved with generative AI, especially as the technology was at that point in time. But there were really some promising opportunities. We found two areas where we thought there's really something to be done. The first one being around that data interoperability piece and being able to predict granular data set metadata tags and attributes to really enable automatic data discovery and data harmonization. And then also a second area around using the opportunity to use natural language, plain language, to develop conversational agents that could offer a way for those non-technical users to deeply query and ask questions of complex humanitarian data sets. So after a lot of input, that conversational data analysis tool is what we advanced first under our Humanitarian Data Insights project. So it's called the Humanitarian AI Assistant, or HUM AI, and it's a tool for individuals and organizations to discover and explore and get insights from their structured data sets, all in plain language. The North Star here for us was to make sure that we wanted to make sure that data was usable and useful, and we enabled that analysis by lowering the barriers for access for those non-technical users. And we wanted to make sure it was intuitive and folks could quickly retrieve the information that they needed and tailor information displays according to their needs. The goal, ultimately it was about reducing the time and the effort and the overhead that is required to produce those data insights, both for internal decision making, but as well as for external coordination. And that time literally translates into being able to reach people and save lives when it comes to the humanitarian context. So we wanted to make sure that humanitarian teams were able to respond more quickly to the emerging crises and target assistance more effectively. And for that, using generative AI here, using new technology, we wanted to make sure that transparency is part and parcel of our solution. It is essential for any generated insight, and we wanted to ensure that people were able to go back and figure out what data was used to generate that insight, how the analysis was done, and how the insight was actually arrived at. Next, please. To that end, the core innovation in Helm AI is what we call data recipes, and essentially, it's sort of pre-validated analysis. It is, instead of asking large language models to analyze data directly, the large language models here are used to generate the code that is needed to perform those types of analyses, which is validated by an expert human-in-the-loop review before it is published to a library, and then it is made available to all end users to use. That core human-in-the-loop process was something that was developed over a period of time with a ton of input from not only our partners, but also we open it up to our volunteer community as well to get insights on how to do this. And then that's how we arrived at a process where you can actually see the validation. So on the front end, if we go to the next slide, you'll see a few seconds of a demo as if it was to be used by someone within a humanitarian organization. As you can see, it's just using plain language to query data. And in this case, it's using data from the Humanitarian Data Exchange, or the HDX platform. And it instantly generates, charts, maps, tables. There's the verification badge, which also tells the user that the analysis pattern is verified by a human. And users, as you just saw, can always go to the sources of the data as well to see where the data came from. And all of that is done in order to build the confidence, first and foremost, in AI being used to deliver insights to people. This is a quick overview of the tech stack. So one of the goals, as you might have noted earlier on the slide, was we wanted to not only make sure that we were building usable tools, but we also wanted to enable any humanitarian organization, or frankly, any organization, to be able to deploy the solution and use it. And to that end, we have put together the tech stack for humanitarian AI assistant that ensures there's a containerized architecture. So it's platform independent. It can be deployed in the cloud or on a physical server. It has used various OpenAI models, but the application allows for switching to other models, such as Llama or Mistral, depending also on your geography. And the data sources, in this case, we used HDX, but any database can be connected. For the public prototype, which you can access on our website too, we stuck with the publicly available data on the HDX platform. And then finally, we chose to use a command line interface here. So for those who are using just, you can use natural language to produce that code, but it is familiar to many in the sector, but more general AI developer tools such as GitHub Copilot can also be used. Just want to tell you a little bit about where Helm AI is going, and in the real world, what we're doing now. We've got the prototype, we have it, still available for those to test, and we're learning a lot through that community contribution. But now we are working with our partners to actually deploy humanitarian AI assistant on cash and voucher programs. Specifically, Save the Children, they are a leader in the sector when it comes to actually effectively delivering cash and voucher assistance to those people who are in need of assistance. And in the last year, they've delivered somewhere in the region of $137 million in 41 countries. There is still, we've worked together with Save the Children to recognize that there are still barriers and those that create delays in getting that essential assistance to families, and that has been this delay in operational staff not being able to actually access their data and use that data to inform their decision making and adapt their programs on the fly. So we are working with Save the Children going forward, and if you'd like to know more, please get in touch. And if you'd like to support this work, please do get in touch as well. I want to just call out from the onset, we established a foundation of collaboration with dedicated advisory group of leading humanitarian organizations. We have leaned heavily on the core guidance available to us through Microsoft and GitHub, and from a large community of practice, volunteers, researchers, genuinely interested and driven individuals that we've engaged throughout the project, and they've guided us, they've learned with us, we've learned with them, and they've been instrumental in shaping the core principles that underpin, the research that went into HDIP, the design and development of the humanitarian AI assistant as well. And with that, I'm going to reiterate, please do get in touch with us. If you'd like to know more, you can check out under our products on our website, all of the products that we shared today that Caitlin shared, and then I talked about HDIP as well. You can definitely volunteer on any of our projects. Our newsletter is a great way to just hear about what's going on at DataKind. We send that out every month. And also, you can, if you're interested in contributing to digital public goods, the For Good First issue is a great way to get started. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I see that you have the links on there. So I think we have some time to open this up to some questions. Let me also share a screen about getting access for GitHub for nonprofits as well. If you're able to see, just to reiterate, I'm not sure if it went through the screen earlier that I had shared, the QR code, anybody needs that as well. Any questions from the group here? Let me take a look at chat and in QA. I believe everybody should be able to put in chat. I do have a question for DataKind. I'd love to know a little bit more about some other upcoming events that you'll be at that you're looking for volunteers to join. Is there a project that, another project that you also want to highlight in addition to the ones that you shared?
Yeah, well, I would say definitely sign up as a volunteer through Rustify if you're interested, because we will be launching a couple of volunteer events aligned to Hacktoberfest. So we'll be launching those in mid-September and then really kicking off at the end of September, going into the whole month of October. So chance to get engaged with a couple of different support opportunities to be contributing both as technologists and non-technologists. So if you're someone from a social impact organization who wants to use a tool, we'd love to talk to you because we want you to test everything that our volunteer community of open source contributors is building. So.
Awesome. And for anybody who is not familiar with what Hacktoberfest is, do you want to share a little bit more about what that event, the month-long event is? It's virtual, but I'll let you share a little bit more about what Hacktoberfest is.
So Hacktoberfest is a month-long activity, the month of October, and it's global action to support open source projects, and it's a chance for people around the world to contribute to projects. And if you are a technologist, and in particular if you're working in the GitHub ecosystem, you can get badges and accumulate points as you go forward. Through the month contributing. It's a real chance to make sure that the open source projects you love are sustainable, and it's a good chance to kind of give back to those communities. So really encourage you to do so. DataKind's participated for a number of years and we love it. It's also a great way to find many events near you. So Hacktoberfest will publish the event series for every event around the world. So you'll be able to find DataKind's events through their event listing as well. Cynthia, I'm going to point you to a couple of questions that came in the chat. There's one
Yes.
around successfully switching from Jira to GitHub issues. And there was one right at the beginning around types of files that are supported in GitHub from, are they
Yeah.
text or are they code? You know, what more you can say about those two things?
Absolutely. So for the first question regarding files, yes, GitHub can support different file types like doc files, Word files. I put in a link in there to talk about working with non-code files. So you can take a look at that link and it goes through the different types, but you absolutely can use GitHub for that as well. And then regarding how to successfully switch from Jira to GitHub issues, there are many different ways. There's ways to connect Jira to your GitHub Enterprise that Atlassian has also shared. I can put a link in there. There's also different migration tools. Here is the link for, let me apply there, regarding migration. This is from Atlassian. If you want to stay in Jira, that's totally fine too. If you want to migrate that way, there's many different ways to migrate. There we go. If you have Atlassian to Jira, so you can connect the both, or you can migrate completely. So there's many different ways to do that. Take a look at that documentation. There's a lot of different tools out there to help you do that, but absolutely there are different ways to do that. Good question, Jessica. Awesome. And thank you for sharing the Hacktoberfest. Looking forward to that every year. Many different projects are on there, and it's a great way to connect with the community and engage with new contributors as well. A question that I've always been curious to learn a little bit more about DataKind is how you manage the cohorts of volunteers. A lot of times some challenges that come up where volunteers joining through Hacktoberfest or other events, and then sometimes they may dwindle off. Do you feel the effort and the resources used to engage volunteers, where do you find the line between all the training and investment upfront and how to maintain that throughout many years to come with volunteers? How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So DataKind, we are, we have a huge volunteer community around the world. I think we're about 30,000 members large. We have chapter hubs in cities around the globe too. So we have a chapter in Bengaluru. We have a chapter based in London that covers the United Kingdom, one in DC, one in San Francisco. One in Singapore. I think I might have landed them all, but Tali, you can correct me. We have chapters that are self-organizing, working in local communities. We also have this global network, and how we have evolved as an organization is really to creating opportunities where volunteers can come in for as short or as long term as they want. It's really modeled on the best practices that we have learned from the mature open source software community around us, right? So being able to offer those first issues, able to offer those low touch kind of one-off engagement points, but also, giving people a structure where they can engage for weeks, months, or years against work. Some of the volunteers on CART, the project that I showed, I think have been working on it for 4 or more years at this point. So it's been a real journey and a real passion project. So we try to create that space that volunteers can engage for as short or as long term as they want. And then with the projects, but then also we run a active Slack community. And have other touch point engagement opportunities for volunteers to connect with each other and to connect with the DataKind staff. And so I think one of the things that Tali and I view as DataKind staff members is really, we want to create a friction-free experience for anyone who comes in touch with our project. So that might be volunteers who want to contribute, but also it's going to be the end users. It's going to be the researchers who rely on our tools day in and day out. We want to ensure that what we are offering is high quality. It is, of the highest standard, and it is meeting the needs of these communities.
Amazing. Thank you. And I think we just have a few seconds left. Any last questions before we let everybody go? And I believe there will be a recording out that we can share out afterwards. If you have any other questions, thank you to Caitlin and Natalie for having your contact in the chat there. Let me just double check. Oh, perfect. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And we hope to be able to share more updates from our projects down the line. Thank you so much.